Hi everyone, this is going to be a little different from how I usually do my video reviews. This time I'm not only reviewing one film, but I'm reviewing three films, those being The Interview, Foxcatcher, and of course Ida. So with that said, I'm going to be very quick about reviewing these films, and I'm just going to get started with The Interview. The Interview is directed by Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg, and usually with these reviews I start out with a brief synopsis, but given that everyone by now knows what The Interview is, there's really no need to, and not only that, but the controversy, I don't plan on discussing that either. Primarily for two reasons. One, I think it's become a little played out, and two, it's just irrelevant to the film, so there's really no need to discuss it. However, if you really want to know my personal opinions on the whole thing, and I will admit that it is kind of unpopular, then just, I guess, ask me in the comment section. I will gladly reply. Now, to briefly set this up, I have been a fan of Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg's projects in the past. Pineapple Express and Superbad are some of my favorite comedies, especially Superbad. But as for The Interview, to be honest with you, I had no aspirations in seeing this film, mainly because the film looked to be some unfunny crap. However, given the gigantic shitstorm that this film caused, I pretty much had no choice but to see this film. And unfortunately, my perceptions of what this film was going to be are semi-met. Half of it I think is good. However, the other half I think is, well, bullshit. There are some genuinely funny gags and jokes scattered throughout the film, and the first 12 minutes I actually thought were really, really good. But aside from that, the film is written in such an embarrassingly amateur way. It's like, really, Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg, they were behind this. They came up with these gags. All the material involved in the CIA is material I just don't believe worked all too well. There is a scene, of course, and you see in the trailer with Seth Rogen and a tiger that is just way too long, followed by Seth Rogen shoving something up his ass, then, him getting cavity searched, which there's a funny bit there, but the build up to it was just not worth it in my personal opinion. And of course other gags in the film that go on for way too long and are just not all too great either. And the characters played by Seth Rogen and James Franco, they were just two bumbling idiots, and there were times that they did actually make me laugh, like I said earlier, but they did kind of annoy me though too. As for the overall positives, I did chuckle a handful of times at the film. Kim Jong-un is funny, and the death scene with Kim Jong-un is actually filmed very well. I really dig the use of the slow-mo mix with the Katy Perry song. It's actually really cool. Overall, I'm going to give The Interview a 2.5 out of 5. I can't quite recommend it, but then again, you probably have already seen it, so it doesn't even matter. Alright, so now I'm going to focus on Foxcatcher, directed by Bennett Miller, a biopic that centers on Olympic wrestler Mark Schultz and his coaching under the psychologically disturbed John DuPont. First of all, I want to talk about the things that I like about the film. The cinematography, I think the film is very well shot. It matches the tone of the film, which is very dark. But what is the best thing about this film are the performances by Mark Ruffalo, Channing Tatum, and especially Steve Carell. I mean, these are three actors given the performances of their careers. However, the problem is that they're really not given anything to do, which is the biggest problem with this film. Instead of focusing on characters, or really story for that matter, this film focuses on, the wrestling, the training in order to get its message across, which is American idealism, perfectionism to the point of insanity. And there are other things like that as well in the film. But I think the problem is that you have such rich or potentially rich, captivating characters, and you just don't do anything with them. For instance, you have John DuPont played by Steve Carell, who is an incredibly fascinating character, yet the film decides to imply or gloss over things rather than explore his psychosis. And I think that really leaves the film without any depth, unfortunately. In the film, you never quite understand his motivations, or really anybody's motivations in the film for that matter. And I'm not saying like I need everything clear-cut and explained to me, but you gotta give me something. And I think ultimately, by the end of the film, everything just kind of came off very shallow. And not only that, but there is this very big event that happens at the end of the film that has absolutely no build-up. It literally comes out of nowhere. And go back to the depth of its characters, I would love to see the more personal moments with Mark Schultz and John DuPont, especially John DuPont and his mother, which the film, again, just mentions but never explores. And unfortunately, as great as Channing Tatum and Steve Carell are in the film, there came a point where, given the lack of coherent development and depth given to the characters, Their performances kind of came off as if it was like a parody or, something like that, rather than them embodying these characters. And I say that because Channing Tatum comes across as a brooding ape, and you have Steve Carell who comes across as a mentally disturbed bird. And one last thing I want to say before I go is that I wasn't a big fan of the wrestling scenes either. However, I do respect in the way that they were filmed. They're filmed in a very matter-of-fact sort of way. The camera isn't always up close and personal. It does kind of stand back, and the sound design, it isn't very gut-wrenching or gut-punching. It is authentic. However, as somebody who is not a wrestling fan, it didn't make me into a believer. Overall, I give Foxcatcher a low 2 out of 5, which is a big disappointment considering that I was really looking forward to this film. And not only that, but this film has got some pretty high praise. It has an 83 on Metacritic, which I'm kind of astounded by. Now for my third and final film, which is Ida, directed by Paweł Pawlikowski. I think that's how you pronounce his name. And Ida is a Polish film that follows a young, inexperienced novitiate nun as she and her newly discovered aunt search for their family's remains in a 1960s post-World War II Poland. Albeit that Ida isn't nothing entirely new in terms of story, because there are things that are kind of predictable about where the film is going to go. What makes this a unique film is how it's presented. For starters, the cinematography and the overall look of the film does an incredible job at really replicating this 1960s film look. And honestly, if it were not for the clarity in the visuals and the audio, one could easily confuse this as a 1960s film. And the cinematography isn't overly dynamic. In fact, I think there's only one scene where the camera is actually moving. Outside of that, the camera just kind of sits and observes. There are a lot of long shots in the film, and they're quite beautiful. And moreover, this is a film that has a lot to say without actually saying a whole lot. It has something to say about family, faith, morality, commitment, and especially forgiveness, and the list goes on. This film does have a fair amount of ambiguity in it. However, unlike something like Foxcatcher, it really didn't provide you with the information that you needed in order to piece everything together. This film provides you with the tools so that you can kind of come up with your own idea of maybe what the motivations were behind a certain decision, or what made the characters into what they are. To me, one of the more interesting characters in the film is Wanda, who is Ida's aunt in the film. And she's somebody who suffers from depression, and not only that, but she lives her life sort of on the edge. She smokes, she drinks, she's promiscuous. She's the exact opposite of Ida, who is incredibly squeaky clean because she's an aspiring nun, so she does not partake in such pleasures. Ida's goodwill and faith is tested throughout the entire film, which I did find engaging. And this is not the kind of film that is meant to be entertaining. This is an art film in every single sense of the word. This is an extraordinarily quiet film, and if you're somebody who hates these types of films, then you will definitely hate this one. But as for me, I really enjoyed it. It's not a film that I would necessarily see again, but on an artistic standpoint, I can definitely appreciate it. Overall, I give Ida a low 4 out of 5. And with that said, that concludes my reviews for these 3 films. Hope you enjoyed it. As always, I'm Colyn Kirkland, and thank you so much for watching.